everyone! In today's video I am just going to be talking about my autistic diagnosis, how it came about, how I felt, how my family felt, help from school, my teachers' responses, etc, etc. If you want a little bit of a background about me and my childhood traits of being autistic, I did a whole video on it. Go watch that. It was my first video and it's had an amazing response and I was so overwhelmed. So thank you for all the lovely messages on that video. It really made my day and made me cry. So, but yeah, that's enough about that. Anyway, as I've said, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my autistic diagnosis. I'm going to start off by saying when I got diagnosed, I was 9 years old. I started the process when I was about 8 years old. It took about a year all in all. My mum started the process. She took me to a GP, the doctors, who then referred me for an assessment at CAMS. And when my mum took me to the doctors, originally she didn't know I was autistic. She didn't have ideas that I was autistic. She thought it was OCD. So yeah. However, previously at school had called my mum into school. This was about 2 years before I started to get assessed. One of my teachers called my mum in and said that we think she might be autistic because I was showing signs of just really being a bit odd. I mean, I don't really know how else to put it. I was being a bit different as a primary school kid. Key stage 1, I think it was year 2 when my mum was called in, and I was talking to myself in the playground a lot at that age. Yeah, I was talking to myself. I had imaginary friends. I was hand flopping, all that jazz, which I spoke about in my last video. That teacher then unfortunately left and a new teacher came in, and my mum then went back in and was like, have you noticed anything? That teacher said no, she's perfectly normal, she's socialising with all these other kids, it's fine, everything's fine and dandy. So then he was left for a couple of years. Things at home were still a bit strange, a bit odd. My mum always kept saying, I always remember hearing in the background her speaking to my dad saying that they're going to take me to the doctors, and I was always like, no, don't do that, don't take me to I don't need to go see a doctor, all that. And eventually she did at 8 years old, and I got referred to CAMS. I had a couple of assessments before they then assessed me for autism, because obviously my mum didn't suggest I was autistic, she didn't know. So yeah, I've said so yeah so many times, just ignore that, please ignore that. So I went to CAMS for the assessment, and originally they just thought that I was a bratty, spoilt, naughty child, which was not the case at all. I remember one assessment, they really offended me and I locked myself in the toilets and refused to come out. So yeah, I wasn't impressed by that person, whoever it was that assessed me. They really offended me and made me seem even more like a spoiled brat when I just locked myself in the toilets. And it was so frustrating for my mum though. I do feel for her now. Like, I look back and I think, oh God, I were a nightmare at times. Like that. Like, what do you do in a situation when your child locks herself in the bathroom in a public place and refuses to come out because the person's offended her? So yeah, sorry mum. Anyway, after that I was then referred, after my mum being given leaflets on how to handle naughty children, I was then assessed to be autistic. I don't remember much about the assessments other than that very distinct time of when I locked myself in the bathroom. I'm not sure about the processing stage as I was quite young. I don't really remember all about that much about that, or only what I've been told off my mum. They took me in to be assessed, and I think my teachers were given questionnaires and things like that, questionnaires about me and about my autism, and they didn't think there was anything wrong, but when they was filling out the questionnaires, things popped up, like things that I've done and things that one that I can remember was, apparently the teachers thought that I was very literal, and they noticed how I organised things. They had pots on the middle of the tables, and I would be sat organising them and things like that. So when I got diagnosed, I was in year 5, and at that point I was at a different school. My mum had to take me out of school because it was a nightmare getting me to the primary school that I was at. I was just flat out refusing to go. I hated it. I was just screaming, shouting before school on a morning. It was very traumatic for my parents to have to put me through that. So they took me out of school and put me into an independent school, which was with a class of 7, with a year of 7. I was very fortunate to be able to do that. I don't know where I'd be without. At that point, I could not have gone to my primary school for any longer. And going to this independent school was literally like a saving grace. At that time, at that point in my life, it was. Yeah, I was diagnosed in my first year at this new school. And obviously at this point my mum knew that I was autistic. She was very certain that I was going to be diagnosed. After going to the assessments, doing a lot of reading up about it, she knew. So when we did get the diagnosis, it wasn't a shock to her at all. But to the rest of my family, when I got the actual diagnosis, it was a shock. By the way, if you can hear shouting or talking, whatever, it's just ignore it. So yeah, not shouting as in arguing. No one's arguing. I live in a very safe household. God, don't stress. Just shouting as in like to back up, something like that. But yeah, anyway, as I was saying, rest of my family was very shocked, quite upset at the thought of me being diagnosed, where my mum was like, finally, we can chill out now, we know how to adapt to situations, what to do, etc, etc. And at that point, we thought we were going to get help from CAMHS. That wasn't the case. I was diagnosed, off you go. You're no longer part of us. You can just go off and deal with it on your own. My mum was given a leaflet, just like she was giving a leaflet about naughty children. She was giving a leaflet on autism, and I remember her saying she's read this leaflet. She's read all about autism. She knows all about it now. She needs help from other people, like counselling, and I was on a waiting list. They put me on a waiting list for counselling for like a 2-year waiting list, and I needed help like right that second. So yeah, it wasn't great. I was left to my own devices really after the diagnosis. So yeah, a lot of people have asked how I felt when I was diagnosed, and quite frankly, I didn't really care. I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't understand the autistic diagnosis. It did not really impact me at that stage in my life. I was only 9. For the first couple of years, I could not have cared really. I was a bit in denial, not in denial, but just a bit careless really. At that time, everything was fine. As I then got into my teenage years, I then began to realise that I was autistic and what autism was and how that was going to affect my life. We were told that when I got my diagnosis, you were told that I wasn't allowed to be in the army and I wasn't allowed to be a pilot, which still to this day I don't understand, but it was quite upsetting for me when I decided I wanted to be in the army. I wanted to be an intelligence officer. I had a massive thing about being an intelligence officer in the army, and it was the one thing I couldn't do. So that frustrates me, still frustrates me. I don't understand it, to be honest, and I think it's discrimination. I think that I would do really well in the army. I do really well with rules. I am good at taking orders, and I can adapt to change. I struggle, but I can. It's never stopped me from doing anything. It did as a child. I reacted differently, but now I've got coping mechanisms. I know how to deal with things. But you know what? I've just gone off in a bit of a tangent there about the army. But it was one of the things I was told I couldn't do it. And as I grew up and I realised I couldn't do it, it made me want to do it even more. So that was probably a negative about being diagnosed. Another negative would probably be, as I grew older, I realised I was different. I had this label and I thought it defined me. I was like, I'm no longer Hollie, I'm now Hollie with autism. I just thought it was this thing that I carried around with me, and I was embarrassed of it. I didn't tell people. As I've grown older, I've now realised that's ridiculous, and so many people have so many different things now. What is the point in hiding it? People need to understand what the problem is and what's different about you, so especially friends and people you actually know, so they can adapt to and try and understand why you may react differently to certain things. I feel like now it's necessary for people to know that maybe not know, because there's been a lot of people that hasn't known I've had it, and it's never really caused me any problems, people not knowing, but I just think it's nothing to be embarrassed of anymore. Obviously, I mean, I'm broadcasting my opinions to the whole world. Not that the whole world's watching, but you know what I mean. But yeah, a negative for me at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I am only 17 now. This has only been a recent new thing for me. Since leaving high school, actually. Because I was in such a small, condensed environment in this independent school that had the total of 200 pupils. So it was all very for me, it all felt so real, and I felt like I had to keep it this big secret. People knew I had it, definitely, but I was just embarrassed to talk about it. I'd pretend I didn't have it. It was just like a label that I had, and I hated it. I hated anyone talking about it. I hated my parents talking about it. And I had this thing in my head where I thought, this is not going to define me. I'm not going to let it ruin my life choices and affect me. So that's why I kind of hid from it. But there is lots of positives of being diagnosed. Like my parents, if I weren't diagnosed, my parents wouldn't have known how to deal with me and how to deal with the different situations that came up with the different problems that I had. Because obviously I need to be dealt with differently to a normal person or a neurotypical person. So it was necessary. But as my diagnosis in the school, I don't think it made that any difference whatsoever. I had no extra help educationally or support. I already had the support, so the diagnosis itself for me didn't make any difference. However, I was in an independent school. I don't know what that would be like in a public high school. Now, would I say that it's worth getting a diagnosis? I would say yes, absolutely. I think that it really will help you understand why you're thinking different to other people, why that is, whether you want to keep your diagnosis a secret, as I did for most of my life. And if I'm honest, I think I did the right thing, as in I didn't broadcast it. I think that it could have potentially caused a lot of problems for me if I did have broadcasted it in my high school. I think it can cause bullying. I think it can cause stereotypes, assumptions from lots of different people. Because I was in such an enclosed environment, being bullied would have probably been the worst thing that could have happened, and it would just cause a lot of problems, and I didn't want that. So I did keep it under, people knew I had it, definitely, but I didn't want to come across as weird or strange. I mean, I probably did, let's face it, because I probably did, but I tried to keep it under wraps. I think that's a phrase. I think I'm just making up phrases as I go along here. But yeah, I don't really think that now it affects me at all, other than that I can't go in the army, and it's something that I probably would have wanted to do and would have looked into doing more. And you know what, I probably will look into doing it more, because I just think that the whole process of it is ridiculous and they need to change it ASAP. But that's just my opinion, and I know that broadcasting my opinions on social media can cause a lot of different problems, and I understand that some autistic people being in the army would be horrendous for them, traumatic, and it would not end well, but I think each person should be assessed individually, just like anybody. I really do agree with that. I don't think that just because of having something, having a label, I think that that should automatically stop you from having a particular job. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But I've gone off on another rant about that. As you can tell, I feel very strongly about the issue. So yeah, I'm sorry if I did ramble a bit in this video. If you do have any questions about the diagnosis that I haven't mentioned in this video, please just answer me. Just ask me in the comment section below, and I will try and answer any questions regarding this. If you have any questions about anything else, also comment them, or go over to my Instagram and DM me any questions you might have. I am going to try and do a video on all the different questions, as I've already said. So yeah, if you like this video, please like it, as I want to carry on making these videos for you, and it'll give me an indication on what you want to see. I hope I said everything that needed to be said, and I didn't just go on and on like a lunatic, but I can just talk for England. So yeah, I'm gonna go now. See you later.